pancreatic cancer. And I know all of our thoughts are with the Hammes family on this unexpected journey that they are on. I wanted to share my Rotary moment with Bud this week so we can all spend some time with him. So Rob, if you want to roll the video.
There you go. Hi, it's Andy. I am here on the beautiful banks of the Mississippi, the Minnesota side. Who knew it was pretty over here? I am here with my good Rotary friend, Bud Hammes. Bud, say hello.
Hi.
All right, here with Bud. I'm here for 5 questions with Bud. First question, Bud. I know you grew up in Wisconsin and now live in Minnesota. Do your loyalties still lie with the Badgers and Packers?
They do. I will always be a Packer fan because I got to go to the frozen tundra during the Ice Bowl when it was 20 below zero. So my loyalties were kind of frozen in at the age of 16.
Awesome. Bud also out here has a lot of birds and wildlife flying around. I shouldn't say running around with birds. Bud, what's your favorite bird over here?
I'd have to say it's the barn swallow.
The barn swallow.
We have 2 nests and they just keep me entertained coming and going all day long.
Wonderful. The other thing Bud told me is he likes to travel a lot. Where is probably your most memorable place that you have traveled to, Bud?
I think the most memorable place was Australia. Barb and I went down for work, but we took almost 2 weeks. And we had a ticket that took us all around Australia, so we got to see all the parts of Australia and drive on the wrong side of the road, have a lot of great adventures. The warmness and the southern sky and all of the interesting differences between the Australians and us was just a great trip.
Cool. Next thing, I know you've been in Rotary quite a while.
20 years.
Had a lot of great experiences with Rotary. Tell me about one experience that really stands out to you.
Yeah, it's hard because I've had so many, but going to India on a Rotary polio vaccination was probably the best trip I've ever had. It really showed me the power of Rotary, the leadership, the collaboration that really impacts good in the world.
Cool. Last question. What does Rotary mean to you, Bud?
I think for me, Rotary is the opportunity for fellowship, having fun, and doing good in the world. It's those combinations that I can't find in any other group. And being with people that I have fun with and can collaborate with and do good for our community, our country, and the world is just a fantastic thing.
Well, great. This again has been 5 questions with Bud Hammes. Thank you, Bud, for your time.
Thank you. It's good to have you out here.
All right.
And thank you, Bud, for sharing that time with me and for that message. You know, just a reminder, I know we've got Todd on here from down in Texas, but in that Ice Bowl that happened, I believe the Packers did prevail over the Dallas Cowboys at that time. So what a great opportunity there for Bud to take part in that. And I know the day that I met Bud, my stress level was running a little high. And I know Bud talked to me a lot about the birds while I was out visiting him. And I saw this week that he took Barb as well as Tom and Julia Barenbeck out for a bird watching cruise. And just having that time with Bud to view nature and enjoy the beauty that we have in this region was really helpful to me on that day. And just a great reminder of, you know, how nature can recenter you sometimes. So just a great message and a takeaway from my moment there with Bud. So, all right, moving forward. Today we have a new member to our Rotary Club. Casey Green is sponsoring our new member. However, Casey cannot be here today. She has agreed to pay a significant fine for that. But I have the honor of introducing Sarah Ellingson to our club. Sarah is the new executive director of the Women's Fund, and we are happy to have her here to join us. Sarah, if you could take yourself off mute and introduce yourself real quick, that would be wonderful.
Sure, of course. Hello, thank you, Andy. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to get involved and meet all of you, hopefully in person sometime soon. I'm impressed by the positive impact Rotary has had on the community. And I have personally enjoyed many Rotary projects. I think my kids are basically raised at Kids Cooley. And just to tell you a little bit about myself, my husband and I have lived in La Crosse for almost 20 years now. I have two daughters, one in elementary school, one in middle school, and they're both in class somewhere in the house right now. We have a cat and a dog, and I'm getting a lot of pressure to also include a fish, birds, and a hamster to that list, but I'm staying strong. And it's a firm no on my end. As Andy mentioned, I'm the executive director for the Women's Fund of La Crosse. I've been in that role for a little bit over a month now. And I came to the Women's Fund from Vendy Advertising, where I worked as a marketing and account director for about 12 years. And prior to that, I worked at Ovation Marketing and State Bank Financial. So if you look up all those locations, I basically kept my career within a 4-block radius of downtown La Crosse, just straight up streets. So again, thank you for having me, and I look forward to working with all of you in the future.
Awesome. Welcome, Sarah, to our club. We are happy to have you. With that, now our membership count stands at 189 active members and 27 honorary members with the addition of Sarah. So wonderful news. We have no club resignations to report today. Moving forward, Rotary announcements. I have a few announcements, and then we will have additional Rotary announcements when I'm done. When we move towards that announcements, please remember to unmute yourself and state your name. Al Lewis and his Muskie Challenge is now complete. He wrapped it up last weekend. Congratulations to Al on his efforts. And I know we're still working on tallying up those numbers. Hopefully we'll have those to you soon. So look forward to that announcement. That should be very exciting. Our Rotary Board is sponsoring an event next week on Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. The event is called Vote Safe Project, put on by Leader Ethics Wisconsin. And I know there are a lot of questions around the upcoming elections, and this offers an opportunity for us to learn more from a panel of experts. There was a flyer that was sent out, I believe, yesterday, or maybe it was on Tuesday, and there will be information in our newsletter on how you can join that event. Again, that is next Tuesday, the 22nd at 7 p.m. Anita is still making cards, which is wonderful, wonderful news. If you would like to purchase a card, you can call Anita and set up a time to purchase those cards. Lynn has included her contact information in the newsletter, so please reach out to Anita, and if you're in need of a card, just a great opportunity. And again, all the proceeds for Anita's cards do go to the Rotary Works Foundation. In 3 weeks, we will have our second Rotary Leadership Series presentation. This will be at 7 a.m. on October the 8th. And I know our first session with Tom Thibodeau was really well received. And on October the 8th, we will have Carolyn Colleen Bostrick as our presenter. And I know she used to work here locally at Gunderson and currently is working for Case Western University. But she is a very, very inspirational speaker. So you must pre-register for that event, and there is a link in the newsletter to register for that event. And I just realized yesterday that that's going to be a pretty awesome day on October the 8th because our speaker here at Rotary is going to be Ed Fuda, the past General Secretary and Chief Operating Officer of Rotary International, who is also another great speaker. So mark your calendar. October the 8th is going to be a great, great day. In your newsletter, there is a link to a Vibrant Learning Workshop put on by District 6250 on October 14th via Zoom. This will be a great opportunity to learn and also a good chance to connect with other Rotarians throughout our district. So please sign up for that event if you can. Also in our newsletter, there is a reminder that if you are not connected on myrotary.org, you should be. There is a great way to connect you to the Rotary world. I am happy to also report that Interact is moving again. It has been a very different environment due to most of the schools being virtual this year. But we are planning and meeting and moving forward with meetings with the students. And we will be planning to have an iFeed event this year. It will not be a major packing day like we have done in the past, but likely will involve some food collection to help our local food pantries. So if anyone has an interest in being an Interact advisor, please reach out to myself, Rob Palmberg, Michelle Scamp, Candace Telestosh, or Mike Nickel. We would be happy to get you involved. Our Rotary family in Iowa reached out a couple weeks ago with the storms that blew across central Iowa on August the 10th. The Rotary Club of Lynn County set up a website to help collect donations to help with the cleanup effort in that area, and are also looking for help with some items needed in that community. So please check your newsletter or check out our website if you can help with those efforts. As far as other Rotary announcements, Jody Wiedock, I know you have an announcement.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Oh, now I bet you can hear me better. Thank you, Andy. I am so thrilled that I get, my name is Jody Wiedock. I forgot to say that, but I get to announce that our club board on Monday approved a $10,000 donation to the Razia's project, Razia's Best Project, which we're calling Wheels of Hope. I couldn't be more thrilled. It's absolutely fantastic news. I really appreciate the support of the board. That's a very bold gift, and the impact is amazing. We are now well on track of reaching our goal of raising $45,000 by the end of November. In fact, after that gift, we are down to $13,000 left. That's what we have remaining to reach our goal. So incredible progress. So we really think we can wrap this up more quickly, possibly by the end of September, especially if those of you who have been considering a gift and haven't done that yet. Maybe you might be motivated by Thomas's walking challenge and might want to jump into that. He's been posting some incredible photos and about some great trails that he's walking on. So we are so thrilled. We also
Jody?
have two, yes, Bill.
I just want to, how far are we away from goal?
$1,300.
You
What
said
did I say?
13,000.
Oh, see, we need each other, right? We've got. Thank you for catching that big mistake. I bet you everybody on the committee is going, wait a minute, we just heard a different number about an hour ago. Yes, 1,300. 1,300. So there, we also have two presentations lined up with clubs within the district that if we actually surpass our goal through those presentations, we believe we'll be able to just pass on those dollars and to the school in Afghanistan so that they can use the money to help pay their drivers and for supplies and maintenance. So just really thrilled with our progress. And thank you to everybody who's provided incredible support in helping us get there. Thank you.
It is absolutely great news, Jody. I know I personally am one of the people who planned to donate to this project and got the little envelope and had it ready, and it was sitting on my counter, and then all of a sudden it disappeared. And anyway, yesterday I stopped procrastinating and did it yesterday because I thought, you know, I might not get a chance next week because this project might be done. So hopefully others will contribute and we can finish up this project very, very soon. That is just absolutely great news. Thank you, Jody. Jamie O'Neill, I know, has an announcement.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. I want to give an update. The Mississippi River cleanup is coming up on September 26th, again from noon to 3. We do need people both walking and in boats. And like I said last time, Rotaract will join us, and After Hours just announced that they will be doing a meetup in Bryce Prairie. So feel free, if Bryce Prairie is closer to you, to join there. We have several satellite locations, and then the Clinton Street and Bryce Prairie will be in-person meetups, again, social distancing and outside, but I will put the link in the chat box. And then I also just wanted to share, this might not seem Rotary-ish, but I did resign from my position at Grow today, and I just wanted to say that I feel so grateful for all the Rotary There were a lot of Rotary people that I feel were so supportive of both me and my role and GROW. Rotary Works has donated to GROW before. Katie Burkadal was a president at GROW. Sarah Ellingson, welcome to the club. She also has had her hands in GROW. A lot of you have donated, and then other women executive directors in this club have been so supportive and great to work with. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. I do feel really honored to be part of like 10 garden builds, free camp experiences for kids in this area. It was so nice to work on ACEs and some social justice stuff through the school garden programming we were doing. So I feel so grateful. We have a really good staff right now, and they'll be able to take this into the future. So I'm really excited. I'm now able to, one of the main reasons I stepped down was so I could do the Mississippi River cleanup and give it my all. I'm just kidding. But I will be able to spend more time on Rotary. Also just online classes with my kids. COVID is hard, I think, for everyone, and I'm glad to be able to spend a little more time with them and give them the help that they need. And then also I'm on the county board and looking forward to putting a little more time and energy into that. Come January, I'll kind of revisit and see if I'm ready to go back into the working world. But right now, looking forward to some more time with family and friends.
Thank you, Jamie, for that announcement. And that sounds like a great opportunity coming up next weekend with the river cleanup. So hopefully we can sign up for that. And I know we've been searching for opportunities to volunteer, and that sounds like a really great opportunity. So thank you for sharing, Jamie. Pat Ruda has a Rotary Works announcement.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to let you know that we met this morning, Rotary Works did, and we approved a grant for Soda 2. It's an Apple Pencil project, and that's for $500. So that's the news from Rotary Works. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Do we have any other Rotary related announcements? All right, hearing none, we will move forward with our program today. Our program this week, oh shoot, I have to apologize. I thought maybe we had somebody that was going to introduce the program. Rob, were you going to introduce the program today?
I sure can, Andy. Let me pull that up. It's my pleasure to introduce Sarah Eskrich. Sarah currently serves as the Madison Metropolitan Sewage District Commissioner and is a member of the Madison Downtown Rotary Club. She previously served on the Madison Common Council. Her career includes roles in public and private sectors, including Deloitte Consulting, the University of Wisconsin Population Health Institute, Kids Forward, the Wisconsin Alliance for Women's Health, and City Council President Michael P. Ross's campaign and office at the City of Boston. She is a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, go Bucky, and holds a Master's of Public Affairs from the Robert M. La Follette School of Masters. Please help me in welcoming Sarah Eskrich.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob, and thank you all for the warm welcome. I didn't introduce myself as a fellow Rotarian, but I am technically a visiting Rotarian today as well. So thanks for the welcome on the Rotary front. I was really pleased to join Rotary in Madison, where I'm from, just a couple months ago. So, all right, Rob's gonna tag team with me and be a wonderful presenter of slides. So thank you in advance, Rob, for doing that and for helping me set this up. It's been really just a wonderful process to work with Rob on doing programming. So I'm gonna just dive right in and encourage you all, if you have questions, please throw things in the chat as I'm talking, and I'm gonna try to leave a good amount of time at the end so we can have some Q&A and some dialogue, and then I'm always happy to follow up with people if you've got questions after the program separately as well. So as you heard from my background, I have a background in policy, as really being a policy person for over a decade, and also being involved in partisan politics. So I'm going to start with an experience and a diagram that really struck a chord for me based on my background, and I think it will resonate for you even if you are not a political person and have not been involved politically. So let's switch slide. the first slide shows, right, this is supposed to be a Venn diagram, but really there is virtually no intersection between Congress acting in the public interest and the likelihood of them getting reelected. So in other words, if our elected representatives do their jobs the way that we want them to and need them to, they're likely to lose those jobs. And that's a crazy design, right? So fortunately, what I'm going to talk to you about today is how we believe we can fix it. Our system is missing two critical dimensions of any functioning industry or business. And I promised that I was going to give a presentation today that's going to make a business case for political innovation, because our organization, Democracy Found, was created by business leaders. So we use that terminology and that analysis to understand the root cause of our political dysfunction and the systemic ways to fix it. So when you hear me say things like the two critical dimensions of any functioning industry, that's where that comes from. So the two missing pieces are that we don't have results in our politics, and there's no accountability for the fact that we don't get results in our politics. And that's because we have two major structural problems. You don't have to change the slides yet, but you can. That two major structural problems with our voting system. I just use my hands a lot, Rob. Sorry, that's going to be a little confusing for you. I'll verbally cue. We have two major structural problems with our voting system. So first, I'm going to talk very briefly about our party primaries. And I think this will resonate with many of you. So we know that most of our elections today are decided in the primary, where candidates are pulled either further to the left or further to the right than voters as a whole generally want them to be. And in 80% of our races for Congress, winners are actually decided in the primary. There's virtually no competition in the general election for those seats. We already know who's going to win based on who made it out of the primary, where less than 20% of the population regularly votes. So that's a problem in and of itself with party primaries. But the real problem that I want to talk to you about today is the influence of that party primary and how that extends to governing. So party primaries, I argue, and we argue, are the greatest structural contributor to the gridlock and the horrible results that we get in Washington, D.C. So take a moment and imagine yourself as a federal politician. It's not just what you have to say to get elected. It's that once you're in office and you're presented with an opportunity to consider some landmark legislation, a bipartisan compromise bill that's actually a solution to one of our nation's biggest problems, right? We know there are solutions to things like our fiscal debt, our immigration system, healthcare, infrastructure. We know there are common sense problems, right? So you're presented with that opportunity as a federal elected official. Think to yourself, what are the operative questions that you should ask yourself? You should probably ask yourself, is this a good idea? Is this the right policy for the country? Is this what the majority of my constituents would want me to vote for? But frankly, it's none of those. The question you have to ask yourself as an elected official right now is, will I make it back through my party primary if I vote for this? And if the answer to that question is no, which it virtually always is on the most complicated and biggest priority issues, then all those previous questions are fundamentally irrelevant, because the rational incentive to get reelected is going to dictate that you vote no. And if you vote yes, you're going to be at least threatened with, if not have, a primary challenger likely from your right or your left flank, depending on which side of the aisle you're on. So the party primary structurally creates this eye of the needle through which no problem-solving politician can pass. So that's the first reason. That's the reason we don't get results, because there's, right, this party primary problem. And there's no accountability for the lack of results, because the customer, us, the voter, really only has two choices in our current system. In any other industry as big and as thriving as politics, with as much customer dissatisfaction, right, voter dissatisfaction, and only two players, in any other industry, some entrepreneur would come in and see it as a phenomenal business opportunity. They'd create a new competitor in the market to respond to what customers actually want. But that doesn't happen in politics, because the barriers to entry are astronomically high. And the single greatest structural barrier to entry is how we vote, specifically plurality voting. So let me tell you about plurality voting. When our country was young, there weren't really a lot of examples when creating democracies, because we were really one of the first, right? So our leaders copied the electoral system that Britain had in existence at the time. They had district elections that declared the winner of the election to be the candidate that had the most votes, even if that person didn't have a majority of votes. So that means they could win with a plurality of support, not a majority of support. And what that means is that in any race where there's more than 2 candidates, the winner could have actually far less than majority support, far less than 50% support. If in a 3-way race, think about it, you could win a 3-way race in our current system with 34% of the vote. And that means 66% of voters actually preferred someone else than the winner. So plurality voting in and of itself doesn't really seem fair or representative when we stop and think about it. We often don't, but when you do, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But I want to talk to you today about the more important, I would argue, negative effect of plurality voting in that it eliminates the threat of any substantive competition to our 2-party system, what we call a duopoly. Because plurality voting creates this spoiler or wasted vote argument. And you all are probably familiar with this even if you don't think you are. Sometimes when we go in to vote, we vote for the candidate. We don't vote for the candidate that we're most excited about because we're afraid that then we would be wasting our vote, or even worse yet, our vote would help elect the candidate that we like the least. And even more often, the spoiler or wasted vote argument actually just keeps people from running, from getting on the ballot in the first place because they don't want to be spoilers. They don't want to be wasted votes. So I would argue to you all that it doesn't matter if you actually want independents or third parties to win, even if you might even just want intra-party competition to be viable in our system, or you might think that we have great candidates already in our current system. But there's something fundamental about understanding that in a system where you only have 2 choices and no additional talent or competition can get in, that's likely not going to serve us very well. Politics really is the only industry where we're regularly told that less competition is better for us as customers. And it shouldn't be that way, and it doesn't have to be that way. So the 2 elections changes that we call together Final 5 voting solve these fundamental problems. One changes the primary and one changes the general election. So next slide. First, we get rid of that broken party primary system. We change to an open top 5 primary. And how that works is that when you go into the primary, no longer do you have to choose to vote in the Republican ballot or the Democratic ballot. There's only one ballot and all the candidates are on that ballot, including third parties and independents, and you choose your favorite. And the top 5 finishers out of that primary automatically advance to the general election. So the top 5 primary totally eliminates that eye of the needle primary problem, and it allows legislators significantly more leeway to legislate in the public interest without that threat of a primary. So the second piece is getting rid of our broken plurality voting system in the general election. So next slide, we move to ranked choice voting for the general election. So think of it as this ballot. My first choice is whatever my first choice is going to be, right? My first choice, I think I have clicks here. Yep, you can click, and my first choice will be the Packers. And I can stop there if I want to. I can just submit my vote with my first choice, just like I do now. But if I do have a preference on the rest of the candidates, you can click again. I can rank all the rest of my choices. And what that does is I get to show my full preference. And when the polls close, you tabulate by counting all the first place votes first. And if someone wins more than 50% of the vote, a true majority with first place votes, then the election's over and that candidate wins. But if someone doesn't get 50%, technology enables instant runoff voting. So that last place candidate is automatically eliminated. And if I voted for that candidate who's now out of the race, my vote, my second place vote, transfers to my next choice. And the votes are tabulated again, and that process continues until you get to a winner with a true majority, over 50%. So it's basically a series of runoff elections, but instead of having to come back again, time and time again for another election, you cast all your votes at once with ranked choice voting. And ranked choice voting ensures that we always have a candidate with the most appeal to the broadest number of voters. So even more important than those benefits of ranked choice voting, if our primary goal is to change incentives to deliver results in our political system, is that ranked choice voting eliminates that barrier to new competition. That spoiler argument, the wasted vote argument, those are gone, because healthy competition is there to maintain that accountability to ensure that elected officials are delivering real results in our lives. So let's go back in the next slide to our initial Venn diagram. The solution is to bring those things together, right? Under a new system of Final Five voting, politicians are both incented to solve problems and do what we as a country need them to do. When they consider that landmark bipartisan legislation to solve a huge challenging problem, they now have that freedom to vote yes on that compromise, because they can say to themselves, okay, well, under the old system, right, if I voted for this compromise, I never would have made it back through my party primary. But in this system, I'm definitely sure as an incumbent that I can make it in the top 5. And then I get to appeal to the broad electorate in the general election and create coalitions of first and second place votes to put together a win if I'm really doing my job for my constituents. So the system of Final Five voting, as we call it, really realigns incentives for elected officials. So if we implement these together, we'll get that desired results and accountability together. And the exciting thing about this change is that it's totally achievable in a matter of years as the momentum builds, because Article 1 of our Constitution delegates almost everything about congressional elections to states. So in our federalist system, states can change our election rules individually, one-on-one. And we don't even need 50 states to make this change to make a big difference in Washington, D.C. Because if just 5 states change their election rules to send delegations to Washington, D.C. under these rules of the game, we'd have 10 senators, and depending on the states, right, maybe 50 representatives in Congress, who would serve as this new vital fulcrum of problem solvers who can take action, who can compromise, who can buck the partisan strangleholds, frankly, on governing. And it only takes a few states to get that possibility of better results for the entire nation. That's the power of political innovation that I'm asserting to you today. And it's, like I said, it's not just powerful, it's also achievable because it doesn't need a constitutional amendment. We just changed the election rules at the state level. In Wisconsin, we need the state legislature to pass a bill and the governor to sign it. That's how we would change our state law. And it's more doable than many of us would think, because we're asking them to change the rules for Congress, right? Everybody knows that Washington, D.C. is dysfunctional. Their approval rating never goes above, what, 20%, maybe at the max. And so we know that Congress is broken. We know that we can change it. And at Democracy Found, we've been working really diligently to build a cross-partisan effort that supports this change in Wisconsin. So if you go to the next slide, our bipartisan lead authors in the state assembly and the state senate published an op-ed this spring in the Journal Sentinel, and it was syndicated in the Sunday paper all over the USA Today network in Wisconsin, saying that this is a change they want to see in Wisconsin. Again, bipartisan lead authors. Our work is completely nonpartisan. And if you go to the next slide, we have a growing group of business and community leaders who are leading this effort. And that's what I'm trying to spread the word today about our effort, so more people will join us. I hope you'll consider it. I hope to answer some questions now and dig in and talk to you separately if you're interested in getting involved, because this is new stuff. right? Final Five voting is brand new. And so we need to spread the word, particularly through nonpartisan and non-political venues. We have to keep this, it's systemic, it's nonpartisan, it has to stay that way. So I've really enjoyed speaking to Rotary clubs because they're such a great forum for community leaders and business leaders coming together to learn about new things and share new ideas. And in a time where people are so, right, people are so frustrated by politics that many people, especially, you know, rational people, have just decided to disengage because it feels so frustrating and sometimes futile. So I hope that this presentation, even just this glimpse of something, gives you a little bit of hope that if we look at those underlying structural issues on how we run our elections, we have the ability to change things and solve them. It's empowering work, it's hopeful work, it's a hopeful message and a bipartisan message to spread. So it's going to happen one person in one conversation in one small group at a time that we're building this coalition. And I look forward to engaging with you all on that now and going forward here in Wisconsin. So with that, I thank you. And I guess I would love a time check on how much time I can take. And you can go to the next slide, Rob, but to dive into any questions, Andy.
Yeah, we've got about probably 5 or 6 minutes here for questions. And I see we had a couple come across on the chat, so I will get those for you. One from Lee Rosh. Ranked choice voting is being used in different locations around the country. Is the trend going in the right direction?
Yeah, it's actually, and I'm reading along with you. The question from Catherine's very similar, that Maine does this. So yes, there's growing traction for ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting has been in place just across the river, basically, from you all in Minneapolis and St. Paul for years, for almost a decade for their municipal elections. And it's really starting to grow in prominence because Maine, as was alluded to in the chat, have moved to ranked choice voting for their federal and state elections. The difference in what we're talking about is that we're combining ranked choice voting with a change to opening up our primary process. And we feel that that's a very important distinction because it is what changes those underlying incentives from a governing perspective. Ranked choice voting has been seen to have some great results for improving the representativeness of elected officials, for getting more women and people of color elected. There's been some great changes from ranked choice voting alone, but we think that adding the primary piece is key to our theory of change and our incentive to change the underlying dynamics and questions of governing. So yeah, it's great that there's gaining momentum for ranked choice voting. There's also there's a ballot initiative. Maine passed a ballot initiative last cycle. There's a ballot initiative in 2020 in Massachusetts for ranked choice voting. And in Alaska in 2020, so on November 3rd, they'll be voting on whether or not to implement the same system that we're talking about, the open primary plus ranked choice voting for all elections in Alaska. So hopefully that will be the first implementation of this very system, and we'll be able to learn from their experience in Alaska, hopefully after this November.
Great, Sarah. Our next question comes from Bill Hole. In your leadoff example of what question a legislator should ask themselves, I wonder whether an equally large barrier at that stage is the fact that almost no major bills in Congress contain only the narrow target at which the overall bill is aimed. Isn't one of the problems we have that no one can vote on one issue and their votes are always counted by their opponents as voting in favor of something they are not in favor of?
Yeah, it's a great question, Bill, and I think it is a symptom of the underlying problem of the fact that we have gridlock, partisan gridlock in DC, and there's no incentive to actually solve any of those problems because there's no electoral accountability. So they throw everything into these bills, right? So that they can try, sometimes so that it's a messaging bill, sometimes so that they can try to get it through because it's a must-pass bill and there's so little that's moving through. But it definitely confuses the issues. We've got a couple slides that I don't have today, unfortunately, I showed them in my appendix, but shows trends over time of landmark legislation, big picture stuff, right? Like Civil Rights Act and things like that, where you had the parties coming together to vote on those. You had blue votes and red votes on those bills. If you look at the recent couple decades in Congress, landmark legislation really only gets passed with one party's support or the other party's support. And that makes it really hard to govern based on what's produced, because rather than just trying to improve legislation and talking about the issues as you're alluding to in your question, we have these pulls back and forth, right? We're talking about repealing legislation rather than improving it and making it better. And that's just not a good system. And a lot of that comes because if you vote on that, if you roll up your sleeves and try to get stuff done in Congress, one of our great supporters is Congressman Mike Gallagher from Green Bay, and he's a veteran. He got into service and he got to Congress and he was like, oh my gosh, this place is totally dysfunctional. No one actually wants to solve any problems, because instead they're just, they're winning points by having political battles with each other. And our electoral system actually incentivizes that with the way that the party primaries in particular are structured, because you're really only accountable to, frankly, less than 20% of your electorate. And so that doesn't give you much flexibility to govern as an elected official and do that really important compromise work that all of us have to do every day in our jobs, right? If we didn't get anything done at the same rate that Congress doesn't get anything done, I don't think any of us would still be in our jobs. So having a degree, and elections are supposed to be the accountability mechanism. So that's why we think that changing to this electoral system will give flexibility and freedom in governing, and also allow elections to focus on issues. Ranked choice voting has been seen to be something that does shift the conversation in elections a bit more towards governing on and talking about issues.
Okay, Sarah, and we had two more questions that came in, and then we'll probably have to stop after those two questions.
Okay.
One from Sue Durkee. What are your thoughts on term limits? And she had some additional comments. She is wondering why you referred to being in office as a job at the beginning of your talk, because back in the early days, the idea was about serving generally that one took away from one's regular job to represent. And part of the problem seems to be that people think of it as a job to serve in office.
Yeah, it's a great question. We believe that ultimately in our democracy, elections were created to be the accountability mechanism to set term limits on those who term limits needed to be set for, right? So there's this accountability that's supposed to come in representative democracy so that people are representative of their public. And as our elections have been optimized by these, frankly, by the two major parties, by this political duopoly, it makes it much more difficult to have healthy competition to hold elected officials accountable. So I think naturally people have come to term limits as a solution that would help maintain hopefully some degree of accountability on elected officials to getting back to that representative key and core mission of what they're supposed to be doing, to your question, Sue. But what I would say, the reason we're not working on term limits, there's a whole host of reasons that in the political science literature on whether term limits are effective or not. But ultimately, if we have accountability in our elections, the voters should be able to decide if people should be term limited out by not being voted in again, or if that person is still continuing to do a good job and should stay in that seat. So that's why we're not working on term limits. There's a whole lot more of that conversation, but I appreciate the question because it's one we get often. And
well, thank you, Sarah.
Quickly,
I know we've got a couple other questions in the chat, but time-wise, we're getting a little slim. So I know you said you were willing to stay around after we finish up the meeting. So what I would like to, and hope you can do that, and maybe we can get those other questions answered. Definitely a very interesting topic, a very thought-provoking topic, and I thank you for being with us today. And we will talk a little bit more in just a little bit. Okay?
Perfect.
Thanks, Sarah. All right. moving forward, we are up now with Rotarians in the News. Mary Michelson is doing Rotarians in the News this week. Mary?
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Mary.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, 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 good. Well, this is my first time doing this after all these years, so you'll have to bear with me a little bit. The first thing I have is that the downtown Main Street had their annual luncheon, virtual luncheon today. And Don Weber won the Legacy Award winner. So if you're part of the downtown Main Street organization. United Way had their usual kickoff breakfast, or would normally had their usual kickoff breakfast today, but it will be held with a food truck fandango today from 4 to 7 at the First Presbyterian Church. I went last time, it's great. So if you get a chance to go, that's some good food items. I saw Steve O'Malley on WKBT last Friday with a discussion of having the Econo Lodge up on the north side, sheltering the homeless during the COVID-19. School District of La Crosse had a forum regarding the school resource officers. It was a time where anybody within the community could come and have their discussion on whether they felt the SRO officers are warranted to be in the schools or not. Everybody has an opinion on that. The new Holman Boys and Girls Club opened last Thursday. A quote from Jake Erickson, "This building fulfills the dream of so many people." So, and if you haven't been up there to see it, it is an absolutely beautiful, beautiful building. Mayo Clinic earns the AAH award. It says here, Mayo Clinic Health Systems in La Crosse has earned the American Heart Association and American Stroke Association Get With the Guidelines Stroke Gold Plus Quality Achievement Award. That's a mouthful. A recognition given to participating hospitals which consistently meet qualities measuring in stroke care. This is the third consecutive year the Mayo Clinic Systems has been given this award. The Oktoberfest medallion hunt started Monday, but it was found today, if any of you didn't know. It has been found. So any of my Fest family that want to pay on this one, that's a good thing that they keep doing with that. Also with Fest, Pat Bogey is giving a virtual La Crosse Oktoberfest history talk in Holman on Monday the 28th, if anybody is interested in listening to that. UWL. Just a couple things there, but I feel, Joe, both for you. First of all, you know, all the dorms are under the 14-day quarantine that started this last Saturday or Sunday because of COVID-19. So that's that. But then on the good news, UWL again tops college ranking. The University of Wisconsin-La Crosse remains Wisconsin's top-ranked public university among its peers, according to U.S. News and World Report. It's the 20th year in a row that UW has remained the state's top-ranked comprehensive campus in the UW system. Quote from Joe, I know it's just awesome, and it's in our backyard. "We're fortunate to continue to rank high in these prestigious rankings." From Joe Gao, "Our reputation remains strong amongst our comparable peers." I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't read the Tribune very often anymore. So having to get the Tribune for the last week so that I could stay on top of my Rotarians in the news, there wasn't much in there, but there were some really good recipes. I found one for easy pancakes that I'm going to try this weekend. Sports news. For all you Bucks fans out there, I did go very well in the bubble. It was kind of a disappointment for everybody. But according to my husband, Giannis met with the owners yesterday, and they're willing to dig into their luxury tax to pay him more to keep him to stay. So that's a good thing. However, I do think he needs a little more help if they want to go any further than what they did. Packers are tied for first with the Bears, and the Vikings are tied for last with the Lions. Our Badgers will be back on the 16th of October. I'll be watching it from my living room, but I'll be glad to see it back to enjoy the day. The Brewers, they seem to either have a slugfest or no fest at all. So that's it. That's all I had. That Tribune was real enjoyable to read for a week, let me tell you.
Great job, Mary. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Mary, you said a first timer this week doing the news.
First,
and
I've been
doing
in
it
Rotary for
virtually,
20
too.
years, and this is the first time I've done Rotarians in the news. Thanks, Courtney.
Yes, great. Well, thank you for that. And hopefully, you know, this is a message for other people out there. Do the news sometimes. It's fun to do. So
It is fun.
yes, thank you, Mary. All right. A reminder, if your envelopes are getting full, you are more than welcome to send those to Lynn. Looking at the time here, we are going to wrap up here. We don't have much time for braggers and squealers. A look ahead to next week's program. Our program next week guarantees to be wonderful. I know this is something that we haven't, I believe, had since we moved to a virtual format, a classification talk. So I know we all love classification talks. They are one of our favorite programs out there. Next week, Katie Berkedahl will be here to give her classification talk, and I cannot wait for next week. That should be just outstanding. So as we have officially come to the end of our meeting, please join me in saying the four-way test, which is a nonpartisan, non-sectarian, ethical guide for Rotarians to use for their personal and professional relationships. All right. Of the things we think, say, or do,
is it the truth? Is it fair to
all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Is it beneficial
to
all concerned?
And is it fun? All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's meeting. It was great to see everyone. If you want to stick around, Sarah's going to answer a few more questions, and that would be absolutely wonderful. Otherwise, we stand adjourned. And Sarah, I'll let you take over again.
Thanks, Andy. Bye, everybody. All right. For those of you sticking, let's see. I want to make sure I said David.
We're going to answer David's question about money.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so David, money in politics is always a question that comes up. We tried to evaluate solutions that we wanted to work on in the paradigm of what is powerful, so what will interrupt the root causes of dysfunction in our political system, and what is achievable, meaning it's something that we could do in a period of years and not decades. When it comes to money in politics, our assessment was that that fell too far in the not achievable category, because it generally, there are things you can do that would make some difference, but generally would require a constitutional amendment, which is just a really high bar to make change. So the reason that this is still incredibly powerful, the electoral change, is that it changes the value, the relative value of money in politics as compared to votes. So bear with me for 1 second while I explain this argument. So right now, when I said earlier, 80% of elections are decided in the primary, right? We already know who's going to win. So as a special interest, you can tell pretty early on where you should put money to have it make a quote unquote return on your investment, because you know who's going to win in these races. So fundamentally, shifting to a more competitive electoral dynamic is going to make money less valuable, because it's not going to be such a predictable return on the investment of the money, because there's likelihood for competition. So you could artificially limit the amount of money in politics, and if you didn't change the competitive dynamics of elections, you probably wouldn't get different results. It just would cost less for those special interests who are already playing in elections to keep playing in elections. So we don't directly, I don't purport to say we directly impact that money in politics question, but we kind of indirectly impact it in that way of competition indirectly makes money a little bit less valuable, and it makes, frankly, votes more powerful, as they should be. So that's what I would say about money in politics. Does that answer your question?
It doesn't make me a believer. I think until the Supreme Court reverses its decision on funding, the colossal big buck people will rule. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I appreciate that frustration for sure. Other questions that people have?
They rule print, talk shows. Where do you get your ideas when it's time to vote in the primary? It's from what you've read and seen and heard. It's, I don't know, Lee, what do you think?
Well, this is a great presentation, and it's very thought-provoking. You know, we're talking about a very large animal, an elephant, and we're trying to describe it from our own very narrow views. And I think what Sarah is proposing is a chance to do some significant action, but also raise public awareness. And until the public is expecting, I'll call it ethical leadership, until we're expecting that, as we would for an employer in business or in any other occupation, we probably shouldn't expect the results to be much different. So I think taking the steps that are proposed here are really solid.
I think it doesn't have to make sense, Sarah, but the big bucks could tag it as a socialist idea and it runs and the wheels fall off.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair point, David. And so we've been doing our work to make sure that our coalition is cross-partisan. We've got Republicans and we've got conservative Republicans, moderate Democrats, liberal Democrats, progressive Democrats, all engaged in this effort. And I think it's just so critical, especially in this incredibly polarized time. The fact that we're working towards introduction of this legislation with a truly cross-partisan group of legislative co-sponsors will be telling, because it's so rare, and that's really unfortunate, but it's the truth. And so that's why we've done the work that we have done to create that supporter group and build on it, because we know that as soon as either side captures or completely dismisses this issue, it makes the hurdle towards implementation, makes that achievability nearly impossible. Yeah. So we spent a couple years doing work before we did anything publicly or anything with elected officials to try to build coalitions of support, and are continuing to do that our entire plan moving forward, because it's such a critical piece to this work being.
I see that as a prerequisite. You need champions on both sides.
Yep.
Wish you luck.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? I really appreciate you all hanging on for a minute or two. If you do, feel free to send me an email, sarah@democracyfound.org. I'm happy to do follow-up and one-on-ones. Great.
Awesome. Thank you again, Sarah, for being here.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. I wish I were in lacrosse with you, that's for sure, but this will do.
Awesome. All right.
Take care.
I guess we'll wrap up then. Thank you again, Sarah.
Thank you.
Well, everybody.